are moving on to page 8 in our packet, and this starts at question number 1 again. And you'll notice up at the top of the page, I put in the IXL lessons for the state of Florida practice, pages 1 through 7, which was the 13 questions given to us by the state of Florida. So I really recommend you take a look through some of these IXL lessons. After looking at those questions in the packet, see where you can best make some movement on your score to make sure that you're able to get a 497 on your algebra best end of course exam in Florida. We want that passing score. No more yellow, no more super close. We want to make this the time that we pass this test, and it takes time. Remember, I said that the people who get the passing scores are spending upwards of 3 hours on that test. You can take up to an entire school day, and the students who are finishing in the first recommended amount of time are students who are getting levels 1s and 2s. They're not making it to the level 3s. The students who are passing are taking more time. They're taking a minimum of 3 hours on this test. So be prepared to sit through and really think and do your time on this test. I can't stress that enough. That being said, let's continue going through our packet. Page 8, number 1. What type of function is represented by each table? So type of function here is our keyword, and our 3 types of functions given to us on our reference sheets. You have in the middle of the page, it says linear equations, but you can also have linear functions. In the middle, it has different formulas for quadratic equations or quadratic functions. And the third type is exponential functions or equations. Exponential. And when you're comparing, just like up above in the packet on, what was it? Question number 12 was linear versus exponential function. So when you're comparing from a table like this, just like number 12 from the state of Florida, this question here, we know there's 3 types of functions, but when they're giving you a table, you're going to be comparing between linear and exponential. So moving here, when I'm looking at my first table, I can see my x values are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my x values always go up 1. Here's my little pad here. Plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. So I would say as x increases by 1, what is y doing over here? My f of x is also my y. As soon as I see f of x, I write y next to it. And I'm going from 2, 5, 8, 11, 14. What is happening with my y? Every time, the same thing's happening. I go from 2 to 5, that's up 3. 5 to 8. 8 to 11. 11 to 14. Every time we went up by 3. So every time the x goes up by 1, y increases by 3, or y goes up by 3. That is telling me that this is a, what type of function? Linear or exponential? That is telling me that this is a linear function. That is the answer to the first part. And then the second part, I can see my x going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, x is going up by 1. I have my pen here. Why do I not use it? Plus 1, plus 1. So as my x increases by 1 again, what is y doing? We go from 1 to 4. We go from 4 to 16. 1 to 4, I added 3, like up at the top, but 4 to 16, I'm not adding 3. I know 1 times 4 is 4. I know 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4, I can check it on a calculator. That's 64. And 64 times 4, I can check it on a calculator, but that's 256. So my y is not increasing by a constant. My y is increasing by multiplying by 4. It is increasing exponentially, which makes this an exponential function. So over here, as x increases by 1, y is multiplying itself by 4. So it is increasing exponentially, which makes this an exponential function. And that is the answer to number 1. And now to practice this on IXL, I'm going to recommend IXL in class. We already did UEC and LZF, and there's a few more if you want to spend some more time on this. VMQ, F5G, DHB, and SP5. Comparing different types of functions. None of these lessons on IXL are going to be ones that take a super huge amount of time. So it's worth some time. If you don't want to go through all the way and make it to 80 on all of these, it's worth it to just look through a couple of questions on each of those lessons. Take the time while you have it to study, right? Study ahead of time, practice, and get some good cramming session in over the next week before you take your test, and make this passing score happen. Okay, number 2. Evaluate the function for f of -3. So this is telling me that every time there's an x, I'm going to put in a -3. And in my equation, on the other side of the equals, I have two x's. So for that x and that x, I'm going to rewrite this and put in that -3. And evaluate just means to solve it. So our answer should be a number. So your f of -3 equals -2, plug in the -3 squared, minus 3, plug in the -3, and plus 1. And when I'm solving and evaluating, I am thinking of my order of operations. So I'm going to start with my parentheses, exponents, then I'm going to multiply and or divide in order from left to right. Then I'm going to add and or subtract in order from left to right. So the first thing I'm looking at, I don't really have parentheses. I just put my -3's in parentheses to indicate multiplication. So I don't really have parentheses, but I do have an exponent. So I'm going to take care of my exponent first. -3 squared. You can put that on the calculator, but -3 squared just means -3 times -3, which is going to give me -2 times, it turns to +9, and then I can just bring down everything behind that. Or actually, I can handle this next little piece of business before I bring it down. And I can start multiplying now that that exponent's taken care of. This negative times a negative is going to turn to a plus. And 3 times 3, 9. And now I can just bring down my +1. Then this little piece of business right here, -2 times 9, negative times a positive is going to be a negative. 2 times 9, 18, plus 9 plus 1, and you can just put that right in on the calculator, and you're going to get -8. So when we solve, our answer is the f of -3 is -8. And we're correct on this question. And now I'm going to recommend on IXL some practice. In class, we already did our 96, but I would recommend doing some more practice on this. This is really a big chunk of the heart and soul of algebra. You'll have some easier and probably some additional and some similar practice or questions or test questions like this on your end of course exams. So I really recommend doing some additional practice on your IXL. We got VN, Z, and we got D6H. So take a look through these. If you've already made it to your 80% SMART score on R96, then take a look at these other two as well and get that practice going. And then question number 3. What are the key features of the quadratic function graphed below? So key features of a quadratic function. So they're asking first about the vertex. And the vertex of a quadratic function is either going to be the very, very top, or if it's shaped the opposite way, it would be the point at the very, very bottom. So here, our vertex is at where x is -1 and y is 4. One thing they didn't ask on here that you may see on your exam also is the minimum or maximum. Since this quadratic function is shaped like an N, we have a very, very top, as I say in class, tippy top. The top would be the maximum. And as soon as you have your vertex, you have your minimum or your maximum as well. It's just the y value of the vertex. So here our maximum is at 4. And your axis of symmetry is going to be where you're able to make a symmetrical overlap of your graph. So if I were to take this little purple dotted line here and fold my graph over in half, this point and this point and every point, this point, they would overlap on each other, and you'd have the same thing on top of the same thing. That's where it's symmetrical. So here, I don't have purple. Okay, no purple. My axis of symmetry is where x is always equal to -1. That's just where you would fold it in half. And then domain is asking for your x values of your graph. So your domain, right, you can visualize that this would keep going on and on and on forever, and this would keep going on and on and on forever. So our domain here would be -infinity all the way up to +infinity, which is all real numbers. And the domain is asking what are your y values of your graph. Right, I'll just put that. Domain is asking x values. Range is asking y values. And our y values go down and down and down all the way to -infinity in both directions. And the highest possible y value is that +4, where our maximum is. So our y is always less than or equal to 4, since 4 is the highest value. And I said end behavior, I don't think that was in your old standards. This is kind of new, but all it's asking when it says end behavior is what is your x and y like doing over like the course of infinity. So for your end behavior, as x approaches -infinity, right? So we're starting at the top and looking as x is approaching -infinity, we're going down in this direction. Y approaches -infinity as well. So it's decreasing. And then as x, oops, why did I write y and say x? As x approaches positive infinity, right, as x is getting bigger, approaches positive infinity, y again is approaching negative infinity. So it is decreasing in that direction as well. And then your function is increasing. This is when you read your function, you look at your function from left to right, right? We're increasing when the function is climbing up. So everything up to this point is increasing. So we're increasing when x is less than or equal to 1, and then we are decreasing, right? We've got Bunny's going down the mountain now. I always say that when we're looking at our slopes and rate of change. Bunny's going down the mountain. We're decreasing here as x is greater than 1. And now my recommendation for some practice on this, these standards covered with the quadratic function and its key features in class. We already did lesson HW8. So in addition, I would recommend HFR and YGV. Go ahead and take some time practicing these lessons on IXL to give you that little push you need to make sure that we are passing this exam the next time that you take it.